Hi everyone, and welcome to the RacGuild Townhall number 15. Tonight I'm going to be sitting in for Joe Ullum, who unfortunately couldn't make it to join us tonight and host the RacGuild. But I'm very excited we have Matthew Waddington, who is a legislative drafter from New Jersey, who will be, not New Jersey, from Jersey, who'll be talking to us a little bit today. So he's going to be talking about making rules as code accessible to legislative drafters. Before we do that, did anyone want to introduce themselves as new to the group? You don't have to, but you can if you want to.
Sure, I'll love to say hi.
Hi, Thomas.
Hello, hello from Singapore. I think part of the presentation you'll see from Matthew today is including some of our work. So that's why I want to say hi, so you know who's behind that as well. And I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for giving me time to introduce myself.
Thanks, Thomas. Haruka, I know you're a regular here, but did you want to say hi as well?
Hi everyone. I'm Haruko and I'm in Tokyo. I've been working on Rulers Code research project for past 3 years, and I'm a very big fan of Mr. Waddington and Mr. Menwen Wong in Singapore. So I've been looking forward to today's presentation very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. I've been watching some of the L4 stuff with a lot of interest. So without further ado, I will hand over to Matthew. Thank you.
Hello, thanks. Just to add to that introduction, it is original Jersey, not New Jersey, where a very small island between England and France, but we are internally self-governing and almost externally self-governing. So we have legislation, the full stretch of legislation, like a real country. I will just share my screen if I can. So as Thomas just said, the main thing I want to do today is demonstrate what we've done with L4, the L4 team. And the thing that we're using is an imaginary legislative provision that has a lot of the structures that you see in modern Commonwealth legislative drafting. So a farmer needing to feed an animal if this condition or that condition and the other condition, but that's a not, and then a couple of definitions. So just to, I've got slides. Just to go back to the slides are available on our website, which the QR code links to if anybody wants to look at them. I'm not going to go through every slide in full detail, but you can look at those and there are links in there if you want them. So what is the project that we've been working on? It's the Computer-Readable Legislation Project, CRLP for short. We've been interested in rules as code since it kicked off in New Zealand back in 2019, 2018, whenever it was. But we're trying to bring a legislative drafter's perspective rather than a techie's perspective. So I am not a techie, absolutely not a techie. I try to understand what the techies are up to, and I try to explain it to my fellow non-techies, if you like. Our interests in particular are in helping drafters to be more clear about the logical structures that they're already creating, and helping them to expose those logical structures to their readers. Currently, we hide far too much. So the most important act on anybody's statute book in the Commonwealth is the Interpretation Act. But nobody really knows about that. Nobody ever looks at it except us drafters. Because we've got things hidden from the history of paper. We haven't really caught up with the World Wide Web yet. So we're interested in what the legislation says on its face, in what, according to the drafting rules by which we put it together, you should take that to mean, and whether we can have drafting officers capture just a minimum logical structure and publish that as official from the drafting office. It won't be the law, same as anything else in rules as code. The code is not the law. But we see this in terms of layers, if you like, and different actors in the legislative process. So drafting offices ought to be able to publish something that is very minimal. Government departments, if they see fit and they've got the money, could publish something fully coded. But I say fully coded, that's fully coded for that piece of legislation. Then the private sector are going to produce even more fully coded versions. So the common example is banks with their procedures for taking on new clients. They have to comply with all sorts of legislation about money laundering and about sanctions and politically exposed persons, what have you. So they will want software to handle their onboarding system that complies with the bank's headquarters rules and the legislation. So they're going to need something coded even further and something that is more automatable. Our interest is mainly in explanation rather than automation. So this is the idea that we've been working on with L4, of being able to introduce drafters to the shallow end of rules as code, is the way that we're putting it, to be able to visualize these logical structures that we're creating, to do it in a way that is propositional logic based, not anything more advanced. But I'll speak in a minute about why we would do that. So that to come back to this, how do we get to a visualization from here? Well, let's just have a look first at the visualization itself. And this is where I hope I can get it to work. Here we go. So in this visualizer, you can produce this logical map. I'll just make some space for that. So this logical map, there's the legal effect in this provision is the farmer must feed the animal. And currently that is unknown. If we click on this, it goes green. If we click again, it goes red with a tick and a cross for yes and no. Fairly intuitive. Back to white for unknown. So if we say yes to that and yes to that, it's false because we've got this not operator here. It's that the farmer isn't exempt. If we click again to say the farmer's not exempt, then it's true that the farmer must feed the animal. So this is automatically updating the evaluation. The other thing that this does is you can unfold the definition. So there was a definition of a livestock animal. We click there. A livestock animal, it's a pig or a cow. Similarly, the animal's a working dog. You can unfold that. Now you need a bit more room. Fair enough. You've got zoom tools and so on. You can move these boxes around. So the animal's a dog. It works as a sheepdog. It's registered, and the farmer isn't exempt. Evaluates to true. This, by the way, does allow you to answer yes, it's a dog, and it's a cow, and it's a pig. That might be something that a techie would be keen to stop. But what we're interested in is minimal and faithful to the text of the legislation. So the point about this legislative provision is it doesn't say a pig cannot count as a dog. If one day there was to happen to be a dog pig or a pig dog, a dachshund or whatever, then this legislation would catch that bizarre creature. So in doing this, we are not going beyond the legislation, and we are, by doing that, representing the legislation properly. It's these kinds of aspects that we think are important from the legislative drafters, and partly to reassure legislative drafters that the coding doesn't have to be adding things that are not there in the text. It can be, and certainly if you want to run it in your bank to do something like that, you will need to add things. But just to be able to follow the legislative structure, where obviously this is a simple example, these legislative structures become more complicated. And part of doing this is to encourage drafters to check, have I overcomplicated this? Do I need to? It's not us that overcomplicate things, it is policy, and policy people overcomplicate things because real life is unfortunately overcomplicated. But we should be checking, should I break this up? Has this got too difficult, particularly where there are negatives? So then the question is, how might a drafter get to this from starting with the starting point being the actual draft that they're working on? And what we're interested in here is, this is a legislative draft, so it's something that I'm working on. I'm constantly juggling with changing, rejigging, and if I find logical errors, I can fix them. That's the important thing about rules as code being about new legislation. If you find logical errors in existing enacted legislation, it's too late to fix it. So the bridge between that and the visualization for us is to go through an if-then version, which is with the same sorts of indenting as drafters are already familiar with. So this or set is more indented than the and part. Well, that effectively reflects this extra level of indentation for the or set here, and it's how we keep our ands and ors in order. So we think that drafters will be able to handle that. It's propositional logic, so each of these has to be spelled out as a full sentence. But again, drafters understand sentences, they understand grammar. We don't necessarily have to call it a proposition. And this reflects the way that in drafting, when we break things up, if we read this, if you have a livestock animal, we're used to the idea that you read it as a farmer must feed an animal if the animal is a livestock animal. Or if you have a working dog, a farmer must feed an animal if the animal is a working dog. We've just skipped that, is a livestock animal. So we're used to the idea that we have avoided repeating the animal at the beginning of each of these. Sometimes we might do that. but drafters should be capable of making these full sentences. The full sentences are so that a very basic propositional logic version can work. And this is the L4 code for that. So we then is replaced by decide. The sentences need a backtick before and after them. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same. The decide comes before the if. We might change the way we suggest doing this so that the then is replaced by legal effect and the if is replaced by conditions, because in Commonwealth legislative drafting, at least, what we're doing is creating legal effects with each provision. So we should be able to identify the legal effect that we're creating, whether that's imposing a duty, giving a power, creating an offence, providing a definition, or whatever. So then, how do we get from there to here? Well, it's mechanical, really. It's so mechanical that we can do it with the word macro. The thing that will be unfamiliar to drafters, the bit which is coding in all of this, if you like, as opposed to straight logic, is this assume this proposition is Boolean. And again, we might be able to change Boolean to true false to be a bit more drafter friendly. But drafters are used to the idea that we can make any kind of condition we like. We can be as vague as we like, in that we can say if it's reasonable. All that means is we need to be clear who decides whether it's reasonable, in whose opinion is it reasonable. And that is still a Boolean. So similarly, you can succeed on a claim of self-defense if the force you used was reasonable. Well, the jury has to decide you're guilty or not guilty. They can't decide. It's all very complicated. Reasonable is too woolly. So all these conditions will be Boolean in that sense, and we reckon we can explain that to legislative drafters. The thing is so easy to do that we've got a macro which will do it for us. Oops. But this is just by way of proving that it is mechanical. So there is the equivalent of the L4, the assume and the decides and the ifs and the backticks.
I think, are you looking at the right? I'm still seeing the L4 editor.
Oh, sorry. I meant to be sharing the window. Oh, yeah. That is annoying. Sorry about that. I'm not used to Google Meet. One way and another, the point being that you can mechanically change that if-then statement into this L4. Once you've got this L4, you can paste it into this editor. Once you paste it into the editor, you get the visualize buttons. You press the visualize buttons and you get this map. So this is back in the slides. This looks at the fact that we could have even more drafter-friendly expressions in the L4 itself, and looks at this idea of introducing Boolean to non-technical people, if you like. So what we're interested in is while there are all sorts of people all over the globe doing hugely valuable work in constantly improving the tech for the various different solutions, we're interested in bringing another perspective and in bringing drafters towards that, which doesn't necessarily mean teaching all drafters how to code in these full systems, whether that's L4 or Blocks or Catalan or whichever other. There's some information which I won't spend any time on here about who drafters are, what they do. I just would encourage anybody involved to get in touch, who's in a Commonwealth country anyway, to get in touch with their local legislative drafting office to be able to see with them how their rules as code ideas could be taken forward. We are not doing justice to L4 in this. Just very quickly, as I finish, just want to make it absolutely clear, we are deliberately underusing L4. L4 is a full-featured domain-specific language for law. We asked them very nicely, and they agreed very kindly to let us do stupid things with it. We're not claiming that this is a scalable system. It's an illustration and introduction for drafters. We are looking at moving on to some minimum subject predicate formalization next. So that is me done.
Thanks, Matthew.
Sorry about the problems with the sharing there.
Thank you, Matthew.
That's okay. We will now open for questions. Maddie, I just see you're putting something in. Oh, I missed it. It disappeared on me. Did you want to comment on what you just added in the chat, Maddie?
That was just a joke. It was just hi everyone. No, I was just very touched by how British the description was of the agreement. You very kindly asked if there could be something, and they very gently accepted to do stupid things with them. I found that extremely amusing. That's all. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Otherwise, I don't have much of a comment. Maybe just out of curiosity, the representations and the graphical representation, the way I understood it, because I understand that it's a subset of L4. Do you have graphical representation for other things than the logical if then else? Like which other? Could you maybe define a bit more precisely the subset that you have a graphical representation for?
I guess that question is directed at me.
Two questions, isn't it? The question from our end is, no, we're being very stupid, if and or not. Thank you very much. Done. That's it. That's what we want at this stage. But
yes, so for the earlier version of L4, we had more sophisticated visualizations, but the language has evolved and the visualizations have not kept up. But we were literally just talking about it earlier today, because the contracts and sort of policies you can represent in L4 are getting increasingly complicated, and we're ourselves missing the tools to visualize the interconnectivity of different rules and so on. And I remember my co-founder Meng already had done work, and we're going to bring these visualizers up to speed as well in order to have rule interdependencies and complicated or type interdependencies visualized as well, specifically ontologies. Like I can give you vastly more sophisticated examples of L4 as well. I don't know. Matt has been very helpful in shaping the language according to how legal drafters operate, right? So we were very happy to have that subset of keywords and language that helps Matt and his team to sort of bring their way of thinking into L4, right? Like the L4 was designed to be accessible for the people that draft rules, right? So being able to sort of support their way of drafting and thinking was very important to us, right? And so this was very, very helpful. But then there's also the perspective of other people that write rules that has gone into the language. And so there are often multiple ways of expressing the same thing in L4. It's just a different way of talking, of spelling. There are different feature sets as well. Like a more like sophisticated one is the provision type that we have in L4. If you're curious, I can share that too, without wanting to take away from Matt's presentation.
I mean, I have said to the L4 team they should ask the guild to have a slot themselves, because I clearly am not doing and not attempting to do justice to L4. I'm just saying, look, these people have let us abuse their lovely system to produce this very, very stupid thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to share this if I'm okay to go ahead. Looking at the people of the RacGuild here. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, definitely go ahead. But as Matthew said, we might also do a longer presentation with you another time, perhaps. But yeah, show us this as well now.
Sort of the example that Matt also just showed, where he implemented. I might choose slightly different names for what we consider the variables in IT, but I think for him, like other terms. And like you can sort of see here, it's the very similar kind of structure on the visualization of just Boolean. But while he was talking, I had our sort of AI coding helper code this up in the way that we have trained our AI to do it. And like that can be retrained, right? Like we could essentially tell it to shape it much more like the way Matt would see it, right? And so in that way, it would produce code that would look more a lot like this, where every output is essentially a Boolean, right? But this would be a way to write the same sort of legislation, but in a very different way. So what the AI typically does first is it creates the objects, the ontology that is represented in the wording. And here it's sort of declared an animal as one of a pig, a cow, an unregistered working dog, and a registered working dog, right? You can already see it's a very different perspective. Has a farmer who can be exempt and has a feeding action, feed, right? And then implements the farmer must feed animal if animal qualifies for feeding, which refers to this one. An animal qualifies for feeding means is livestock animal or working dog. Now, what does that mean? It's maybe already a bit too nested. I wouldn't have written it that way. But then it implements sort of a sub definition here. I'm not very legal languagey, so you can throw the right terms at this, where it sort of goes through and it's like, okay, when the animal A is a pig, then true. If cow is true, then registered working dog is true. Unregistered working dog, false, right? And then it implemented what we call like test cases, where it sort of now creates a farmer, one that is exempt and one that isn't, and then sort of just tries to run the code to figure out, because this is how AI works. Like it wants to implement stuff that it can actually execute, because then it can check that it didn't make a mistake in the logic, right? So it can create the test cases that need to pass in order to verify that the logic it originally drafted up here is actually what it expected it to be, right? And so obviously, one of the main assets of L4 is that this is quite readable to even non-technical people, and it's relatively easy to figure out if the AI made obvious mistakes. Like we call this human-auditable, right? Because writing L4, even for people that are a bit more trained with it, can be not too easy. It is a programming language after all, and it requires specific orders, specific keywords in specific places, and so on, right? So having an AI to help you write the code but then to be able to review it as a human, we thought was the real valuable piece, and then being able to execute it in the end by a machine at scale and with precision is sort of the idea. And here you see the farmer must feed, that is the provision, so that you can check out if you have an animal qualifies for, no, here, farmer must feed animal with test farmer. If it's a registered dog, maybe here we go. So if a farmer must feed animal, the test farmer, registered working dog, then farmer must feed hence fulfilled, right? So you see your obligation is the result of this. So like you can essentially ask the contract now what you need to do if you're the following farmer. So that we call that evaluation of the policy, right? So that is not the visualization of the logic, but that is literally running the code. Jaden, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. This is really cool. I'm not too familiar with L4, but the AI rewrote it. Well, like it produced a completely different representation of the same.
It did, yeah. And
yeah,
depending on
I'm just wondering, how does it visualize that? Does it visualize into the same graph that you had before, or is it in a different structure?
To currently use the visualizer here, you need like what we call a function in L4, but I know that function in legal terms means something slightly different, but like a function execution of code that returns a Boolean answer, right? And so in the code that Matthew had produced, every function produced a true or false result. And when that's the case, you see that the interface offers you this visualize button, right? Now, in this case, it's a very stupid visualization because it doesn't actually do a true false. For the geeks, L4 is a strongly typed language. And what it decided to do here, instead of going true false, was to create strong types for pig, cow, registered work dog, and unregistered work dog. And it checks the animal to be one of those types. And so that's technically not a Boolean way of thinking. So I would phrase that differently. I actually had a different AI model try it as well, and it came up with a very different result again, where it declared a livestock animal is one of pig, cow, and a working dog is either has two attributes. One is it works as a sheepdog, and the other one it is registered, and then declares an animal is one of livestock animal variant with a livestock type. I mean, like, it's way too complicated for what I would have done. You can see that already. But like, this is just another perspective of doing the same thing, and it's way too complicated. I think I would have made this vastly simpler. And here it also chose not to have any Boolean returns, so that the visualizer really doesn't add much value here, because it just shows you the consider clause in here, because it's not traversing a logical graph.
Have you experimented with how you're prompting the model? Like, have you tried giving it a schema or giving it like a JSON output of what it should return? Like, it needs to define Booleans at the start, needs to have these sections, needs to have test cases.
Yes. But like, we realize also that that will be up to a little bit of the customer's preference, right? Matt would like it to be in his proposition Boolean logic, if you will, and like, so he would probably give it a different sort of prompt, so that like the draft, like, we consider everything the AI produces as a draft, right? This is never a final quality of what you should just accept and put in production. But this is like a draft. And so you can obviously adjust it with how you train the model. Yeah. So, and Meng joined as well.
Hi, Meng. Are there any other questions from people? I do have a question if no one else does, but I'll throw it out to the floor first. Anything from anyone?
I was just gonna, like, in terms of the visualization side, I mean, it does feel very much like Mermaid, which is, but it's interesting to see, and it's definitely easier for people to I can see how you've done a lot more power with that, but is there is there a way to go if you can convert from one to the other? Would that be of value?
We did start off with Mermaid a fair while back. what really caught us, though, was Mermaid is for traditional flowcharts, if you like. What really caught us when we saw the L4 visualization was that this mapping is a much better representation of statutory logic, if you like, in that it's not a flowchart. It is, you can answer the things in any order. You don't have to answer all of the or questions. And that's immediately obvious to you as soon as you grasp that these are tracks and they split and they join again. So to us, that was the benefit there. But we've looked at Mermaid, we've looked at Q&A markup as well. We've looked at various different ways of representing things. But we do particularly like this. We also, as I say, it's very basic, our version, but we do like the unpacking of the definitions. That as well is a
You like the plus, right? Which
yeah, very much. But that's something we would not be able to get out of a traditional flowchart system.
That's right. And Meng, I introduced the conversation we had earlier that like visualization of rules at scale, even if they don't produce Boolean, will be a very useful thing to have.
Well, that actually is a bit like my question. So I know, Matthew, you mentioned that as drafters, you draft in the way that you showed us with your and or statements. But I was interested in whether, and then you can see the visualizations, but I was interested whether you could go the other way around. So start working in the visual tool and creating some of those connectors and then sort of get it to go back and write that into sentence form.
That's certainly one of the things that we had on our wish list when we first spoke to the L4 team. We never quite got round to that because this went so well. We wanted to make this work properly.
There's definitely no blocker of implementing something like that you would have more of a visual editor and then it produces L4 code for you to review.
And obviously, in terms of the practicalities of this, we're not making up the rules. We are structuring rules that someone else has given us, a politician, a civil servant has come up with. It ought to be the law that these people must do that except for those people, but not these other people, but not on a Wednesday. And and so if they could have a visual means of structuring the rules that they're coming up with before we start trying to turn them into legislation, that would help as well. And that obviously is what the New Zealand Better Rules originating principle behind rules as code was about.
Yeah, and I've pulled up a DMN, a decision table here as well, which maybe you have seen where you can, every line is sort of a rule. And you can say when a certain condition, like the temperature is greater 30 degrees, then the season is summer, right? Like this is for relatively simple repetitive rules when you just have a huge quantity of rules, right? Like let's say 2,000 lines. It makes those relatively easy to edit, and it's something that we can import into L4 and represent this code as well. So that's why I sort of wanted to bring that up. I have definitely enough examples of this. And here, like in this, like DMN, it's called, you can start visualizing things too over time. Right, that's a whole different presentation.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any other questions for Matt or Thomas?
If not, I would love to encourage everybody that is interested in L4 on our main website, which is l4legalease.com. There is a join our L4 Discord button. I don't know if you're familiar with Discord, but like Slack or Teams. It's free to join, and like that's where the team hangs out. If you have any questions, we can help you. In the online editor you find up here on the top right, there's a share button as well, which allows you to create a unique URL of whatever you have been drafting. So whenever you have issues, and you can paste it into the Discord, and then we can see the same code and sort of comment or give advice. It would be lovely to get your feedback.
Great, thank you, Thomas. I might get you maybe to bring back the slides, Julie, and we'll just look at details for next session. Definitely no other questions from anyone before we do move off?
I just want to ask, are there any other government organisations that are using L4 at the moment?
We're pitching. Like we can be a drop-in replacement for a lot of other solutions that are already out there. Some of them offered by big enterprise companies. And so that's definitely where we as a business want to take it to sort of push forward the idea of L4 and make it available to governments and industry. We think it's a fantastic way to manage your business rules, policies, but also for legislation. It's a good tool. So we definitely want to go in that direction. And we have just started the journey on the business side. The research project ended in June.
Just to bring the drafting office perspective, if you like, there are only really 2 other drafting offices that have been fully involved in rules as code. One is Canada, where they're using Blokes, the Jason Morris tool, and the other is the UK Office of Parliamentary Counsel, used a tool created by Adrian Kelly called Loglaw. It has always struck us that New Zealand and Australia, where rules as code originated, the drafting offices haven't been involved particularly, and we do think there's got to be scope for something to happen there.
I also shared in the chat like the collaboration that we had with Matt, where we implemented in L4 the charities law of 2014. It's available on GitHub, and so the L4 files are there, so you can copy that content into the online editor as well and tinker with it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, our next session will be back into the other time zone. So as those who are regular to these town halls know, we alternate time zones. This one that we're in today tends to suit those of you in Europe. And our next one is 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the 1st of October. So we always have it the first Wednesday of the month, which will be 7 p.m. in US East Coast time for our friends in the US and Canada. Although I notice that we do have someone who must be up very late, Mike. I actually don't know what time it is there, but yes, so our next one will be back to our 9 a.m. slot. So if there aren't any other questions, I can close this town hall here. Last chance. No. 5:45 a.m. Right. Actually, that's not as bad as 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess. So, you know. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Matthew, for the presentation, and Thomas as well for coming in and showing us some extra examples and some of the more technical stuff. And also thanks to Ming. And thanks for everyone for joining, and we will see you next time.